My father mocked me when I applied for his position. But his confidence didn't last when the CEO announced I was his replacement. Drop a quick comment saying where in the world you're watching from. I'll never forget the sound of my father's laughter echoing through the mahogany-paneled boardroom. Mark Bennett, Senior Vice President of Operations at Titanium Industries, sat at the head of the conference table with that smug expression I'd seen my entire life. The same look he wore when he told me I'd never amount to anything. When he said I was wasting my time getting my MBA. When he claimed nepotism was the only reason I got hired at the company in the first place, conveniently forgetting he pulled strings to get my half-brother Jerome a corner office. You apply for MY position. His voice dripped with contempt as he addressed me in front of the entire executive team. Dante, son, you can barely handle your current role in regional development. What makes you think you're qualified to run operations? My hands clenched under the table. I was 32 years old, had transformed 3 failing departments, and increased revenue by 47% in 2 years. But to him, I'd always be the mistake, the son from his first marriage, the reminder of his past before he married Monica and had Jerome, his golden child. I have the qualifications, the performance metrics, and the vision, I said evenly, though my heart hammered against my ribs. The board will decide based on merit. He leaned back, arms crossed. Merit? Boy, I built this division from nothing. You think some PowerPoint presentations make you ready? The other executives shifted uncomfortably. My father continued, when I retire in 3 months, this position needs someone with experience, with presence, with your last name. I interrupted. Jerome's resume speaks for itself, right? The room fell silent. Jerome Bennett strutted into my office that afternoon without knocking. At 28, he'd been fast-tracked through every promotion, coasting on our father's reputation while I clawed for every achievement. He wore a custom Tom Ford suit and that insufferable grin that made my stomach turn. Heard you actually applied for Dad's job, he said, perching on my desk like he owned it. That's cute, Dante. Really cute. I didn't look up from my computer. It's called ambition, Jerome. You should try it sometime. Ambition. He laughed. Or delusion. Dad's already told the board I'm his successor. It's practically official. He's been grooming me for this since I graduated from Harvard. You mean since you partied through Harvard on his dime while I worked 2 jobs to pay for Howard University? I finally met his eyes. Your biggest accomplishment last quarter was taking credit for Shanice's merger deal. His jaw tightened. Careful, little brother. You're already on thin ice. Dad's been documenting every mistake you make. That Henderson account you supposedly saved. He's got emails showing you violated protocol. 1 word from him, and you're not just losing the promotion, you're losing your job. My blood ran cold. The Henderson account had been a nightmare. The client was ready to walk away with a $15 million contract. I'd made an unauthorized trip to Houston, spent my own money, and personally convinced them to stay. It saved the company, but technically, I'd bypassed approval chains. He wouldn't, I said, but even I heard the uncertainty in my voice. Jerome leaned closer. He would. And he will, unless you withdraw your application today. Be smart, Dante. Know your place. After he left, I sat in the dark, watching the Chicago skyline through my window. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother, Elaine. Don't let them break you, baby. You're stronger than all of them. I stayed late that night, something that had become routine over the past 5 years at Titanium Industries. The janitorial staff knew me by name. Maria, who cleaned our floor, always left a fresh coffee on my desk at 8 p.m. You work too hard, Mr. Bennett, she'd say in her thick accent. Even your father goes home before you. That night, I wasn't working on reports. I was building my case. My mentor, Patricia Holloway, the chief financial officer, had pulled me aside after the disastrous meeting. Patricia was a 60-year-old black woman who'd broken through every ceiling Titanium Industries had. She saw something in me that my father refused to acknowledge. Document everything, she'd whispered. Mark is playing dirty. You need to be ready. I pulled up 6 years of performance reviews, project outcomes, and client testimonials. Every successful negotiation, every crisis I'd managed, every dollar I'd earned this company. Then I found something that made my pulse quicken: financial discrepancies in Jerome's division. For the past 18 months, Jerome had been reporting numbers that didn't match the actual revenue. Someone was cooking the books, inflating his success. I cross-referenced budget allocations with actual expenditures. There were ghost projects, phantom consultants, fabricated client meetings. Jerome hadn't just been taking credit for others' work, he'd been committing fraud. My hand hovered over the mouse. Exposing this would destroy him. It would devastate my father. Monica would never forgive me. Family dinners, not that I was invited to many, would become impossible. But this was my career, my life, my truth. I copied everything to an encrypted drive. Then my desk phone rang, an internal number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice, shaky and scared, spoke quickly. "Mr. Bennett, this is Vanessa from accounting. We need to talk. About your brother's division. And about what your father asked me to do." Vanessa Chester met me at a diner on West Madison Street at 6 a.m., far from Titanium's downtown headquarters. She looked exhausted, eyes red-rimmed behind wireframe glasses. The 26-year-old accountant had been with the company for 3 years, straight out of Northwestern's business school. "I could lose everything for this," she said, hands wrapped around a coffee mug that had long gone cold. "But I can't sleep anymore. I can't look at myself in the mirror." She slid a manila folder across the chipped Formica table. "Your father came to me 8 months ago. Said Jerome needed support with his quarterly reports. At first, it seemed harmless, reclassifying some expenses, adjusting some projections. But then it got worse." I opened the folder. Inside were emails, spreadsheets, internal memos. Jerome's division showed a 32% growth rate. The real number was -4%. They'd been systematically hiding losses, attributing other departments' wins to his portfolio, and creating shell consulting contracts that funneled money through fake companies. "Who else knows?" I asked. "Your father, Jerome, and Michael Brennan in legal." Her voice cracked. "Brennan's the one who structured the shell companies. He told me if I ever talked, I'd be the one charged with fraud. That it would be my word against a senior VP and his son." "Why tell me now?" Vanessa looked up, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Because I heard what your father said to you in that meeting. How he humiliated you. Everyone knows you're the one who actually does the work, Dante. You saved the Henderson account. You turned around the Detroit operations. You personally mentored 15 employees who've gone on to management positions. Jerome couldn't lead a team out of a paper bag." She reached across the table. "And because my little brother just graduated college. He wants to work in finance. I keep thinking, what kind of world am I creating for him if I stay silent?" The weight of what she was handing me settled in my chest. "This evidence, if I use it. Your father will know it came from me. I'll be fired. Probably blacklisted." She straightened her shoulders. "But at least I'll be able to sleep." I left the diner with the folder. My phone rang. "Patricia. Dante, we need to talk." The board moved up the decision timeline. They're announcing Marcus's replacement tomorrow at 3 p.m. Patricia's office was minimalist, all glass and steel with a view of Lake Michigan that cost more than most people's houses. She poured 2 glasses of bourbon despite the early hour. "You're going to need this." "Tomorrow?" "They're deciding tomorrow." I sank into the leather chair. "That's impossible. I haven't even finished preparing my presentation." "That's the point." Patricia sat across from me, her expression grave. "Your father convinced the board that the succession should be smooth and quick. No drama, no competition. He argued that prolonging the decision would create instability. The board agreed, mostly because Mark has been here for 30 years and they trust his judgment. So it's over. Jerome wins by default." "Not quite." Patricia leaned forward. "I've been on this board for 12 years. I know how they think, how they vote. Right now, you have 2 definite votes, mine and Sandra Kim from Human Resources. Sandra's seen your employee retention numbers. She knows you're the real deal. That's 2 out of 9. Mark has 4, himself, the old guard who golf with him, and Michael Brennan who's covering his own involvement in Jerome's mess. She paused. That leaves 3 swing votes, David Brent from Technology, Angela Ross from Marketing, and the CEO, Richard Jameson. My heart skipped. Jameson hasn't been involved in any of this. Exactly. Richard stays above the fray. He's only interested in one thing: what's best for titanium industries. He's been watching this situation closely, and frankly, he's not impressed with how Mark has handled it. Patricia stood, pacing to the window. Here's what you don't know. 6 months ago, Richard came to me privately, asked me to evaluate both you and Jerome objectively. He wanted real numbers, not politics. I gave him a full report. And he knows Jerome is a fraud. He just doesn't know the extent of it yet. She turned back to me. But if you walk into that boardroom tomorrow with concrete evidence, with a compelling vision, and with the courage to challenge your father publicly, you might just have a shot. I thought about Vanessa's folder, heavy in my briefcase. About the years of documentation I'd compiled. About every insult, every dismissal, every time my father chose Jerome over me. I need more than a shot, Patricia. I need a guarantee that people like Vanessa won't be destroyed for doing the right thing. Then we need to make a deal with the devil. Michael Brennan's home in Evanston was everything you'd expect from a corporate lawyer who'd spent 30 years bending rules for wealthy clients. Stone facade, circular driveway, a fountain that probably cost more than my condo. Patricia had arranged the meeting, just the 3 of us, off the record, completely deniable. Brennan answered the door in golf clothes, martini in hand. Patricia. And the prodigal son. This should be interesting. His study smelled like cigar smoke and old money. Patricia didn't waste time. Michael, we both know you're exposed. The shell companies, the fraudulent reporting, your legal memos authorizing the structure. If this goes public, you're not just disbarred, you're going to prison. Brennan's smirk faltered. You're bluffing. I placed Vanessa's folder on his desk. Am I? He opened it, face draining of color as he flipped through the pages. Minutes passed in heavy silence. Finally, he looked up. What do you want? Your vote tomorrow, I said. And your testimony that Mark and Jerome orchestrated this without my knowledge. That I had no involvement whatsoever. You're asking me to betray Marcus? After everything. After everything he's made you complicit in fraud. Patricia interrupted. Mark used you, Michael. When this implodes, you think he'll protect you. You'll be the fall guy while he rides off into retirement with his pension intact. Brennan poured himself another drink, hands shaking. If I do this, I want full immunity. Written. Legal. Airtight. You'll get it, Patricia said. But only after tomorrow's vote. You vote for Dante, you testify truthfully to the board about the fraud, and we make sure the investigation focuses on Mark and Jerome. You cooperate fully, and you walk away with your freedom. And my career. My reputation. You'll retire quietly, I said. Effective immediately after the investigation concludes. No charges, no disbarment, but you're done at Titanium. He studied me with red-rimmed eyes. You know, I always thought you were weak. Too soft for this business. But this. He gestured to the folder. This is ruthless. You're more like your father than you think. The comment hit harder than I expected. I'm nothing like him. Keep telling yourself that. Brennan raised his glass. You've got my vote. But Dante, when you win tomorrow, and I think you might, remember this moment. Remember what you did to get there. I couldn't go home. Instead, I drove to my mother's house in Hyde Park, the neighborhood where I grew up. Mom still lived in the same 3-bedroom bungalow she'd bought after the divorce, paid for with the settlement that my father fought tooth and nail to minimize. She was waiting on the porch, as if she knew I'd come. At 61, Elaine Bennett was still the strongest person I knew. She'd raised me alone while working as a nurse, put me through college, and never once spoke bitterly about my father, even though he'd abandoned us for Monica and her family's money. "Baby, you look exhausted." She pulled me into a hug that smelled like cocoa butter and home. "Come inside. I made your favorite, sweet potato pie." In her kitchen, surrounded by photos of family gatherings where my father was conspicuously absent, I told her everything. The fraud, the confrontation, the board vote tomorrow, the deal with Brennan. "Are you sure this is what you want?" she asked when I finished. "Once you do this, there's no going back. Mark will never forgive you. Your relationship with him, whatever's left of it, will be destroyed." "What relationship, Mom? He's never been a father to me." "Not really." She sighed, pouring coffee into chipped mugs we'd had since I was a kid. "That's not entirely true, baby. Let me tell you something I never told you before." She settled into her chair. "When you were born, Mark was different. For those first 2 years, he adored you. You were his little man, his pride. He'd come home from work early just to play with you. He had plans. He was going to teach you everything, make you his successor." "What changed?" "His father died. Left everything to Marcus's younger brother, Richard. Cut Mark completely out of the will because he'd married me, a black woman from the South Side, instead of the society girl his parents chose. That rejection broke something in him. He became obsessed with legacy, with proving himself, with building something that couldn't be taken away." She reached across the table. "That's when he started pulling away from us. Started working longer hours, missing dinners, missing birthdays. And then he met Monica at some charity gala. Her family had connections, money, the right bloodline. Marrying her was his way back into the world that had rejected him. So he abandoned us for status. He abandoned us because he was afraid. Afraid that loving us, loving you, meant accepting the life his family condemned him for." Tears glistened in her eyes. "But here's what he never understood. You, my beautiful son, became everything he wanted to be anyway. Strong, principled, successful on your own terms. And that terrifies him." I sat with that revelation. All these years, I'd thought his rejection meant I was lacking. That I wasn't enough. "Tomorrow," Mom said firmly, "you walk into that boardroom and you show them who Dante Bennett really is. Not Marcus's son. Not Jerome's brother. Just you, brilliant, capable, worthy you." The boardroom felt different that morning. The usual confident energy was replaced by tension thick enough to cut. All 9 board members sat around the table, plus CEO Richard Jameson at the head. My father sat to his right, Jerome beside him, both wearing identical expressions of smug certainty. I took my seat across from them, Patricia on my left. Under the table, she squeezed my hand once. "You've got this," her touch said. Jameson called the meeting to order. "We're here to decide Mark Bennett's successor as Senior Vice President of Operations. We have 2 candidates, Jerome Bennett and Dante Bennett. Marcus, as the outgoing VP, you'll present first." My father stood, commanding the room as he always did. "Thank you, Richard. Distinguished board members. The decision before you today is clear-cut. Jerome has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership in his division. Under his guidance, we've seen unprecedented growth, 32% over 18 months. He's cultivated key client relationships, implemented innovative strategies, and proven himself ready for this challenge." He clicked through slides showing Jerome's fabricated success. Meanwhile, Dante, despite his efforts, has shown concerning judgment issues. The Henderson account, while ultimately retained, involved serious protocol violations. He's talented, yes, but impulsive. Not ready for this level of responsibility. Jerome added his prepared remarks, polished and empty. When they finished, all eyes turned to me. I stood, legs steadier than I expected. "Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to start with a question. Mr. Jameson, what's the most important quality in a leader? Jameson's eyebrows rose. Integrity. Integrity, I repeated. Truth, even when it's costly. Especially when it's costly. I opened my briefcase, pulled out 2 folders, one containing my achievements, the other containing Vanessa's evidence. I'd like to present 2 cases today. First, my qualifications. Then, the truth about my brother's division. My father's face darkened. Dante, this is inappropriate. Let him speak, Jameson interrupted, leaning forward with sudden interest. For the next 30 minutes, I laid it all out. My performance metrics, my client testimonials, my vision for operations. Then I opened the second folder. Jerome's division hasn't grown 32%. It's contracted by 4%. These numbers are fabricated through shell companies, ghost projects, and fraudulent reporting. The room erupted. This is outrageous. My father was on his feet, face purple with rage. These are lies, baseless accusations designed to sabotage Jerome's career. Richard, I demand. You'll sit down and be quiet, Marcus. Jameson's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Mr. Brennan, you're unusually silent. Care to comment? All eyes turned to Michael Brennan, who looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. The seconds stretched. Finally, he spoke, voice barely above a whisper. It's true. All of it. Jerome shot to his feet. Michael, what the hell are you? Sit down. Jameson's tone left no room for argument. Mr. Brennan, you're telling us that you have knowledge of fraudulent financial reporting in Jerome Bennett's division. Brennan pulled out his own folder with shaking hands. I structured the shell companies. Mark approached me 8 months ago. Said Jerome needed help smoothing out some numbers to look competitive for the succession. I thought it was minor creative accounting. But it escalated. The fraud is systematic and deliberate. My father looked like he'd been struck. Michael, you son of a, we had an agreement. An agreement that's cost me my conscience and nearly my freedom, Brennan shot back. I'm done covering for you, Marcus. I'm done lying. Jameson turned to my father. Marcus, these are serious allegations. You're claiming you orchestrated fraud to position your son. To position my real son. The words exploded from my father. Not this, he gestured at me with venom. This mistake from a marriage I never should have made. Jerome deserves this position. He's a Bennett. He has the pedigree, the connections, the breeding. Dante's mother was a nobody, which makes him nobody. The silence that followed was deafening. Sandra Kim from HR found her voice first. Marcus, you're admitting to fraud and discrimination in the same breath. Do you understand what you're confessing to? My father seemed to realize his mistake, but it was too late. The mask had slipped, revealing the ugliness beneath. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not remorse, fear. Dante, you've destroyed this family. Everything I built. Everything you built on lies, I said quietly. Everything you stole from people who actually earned it. And for what, Dad? So you could prove something to ghosts. To a family that rejected you 30 years ago. Jerome's voice was small, broken. Dad? Is it true? All of it. Mark turned to his golden child, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for Jerome. Almost. Richard Jameson restored order with the precision of a man who'd navigated corporate warfare for 40 years. This meeting will proceed as planned. We have a decision to make, though I think the circumstances have become considerably clearer. Before we vote, does anyone else have pertinent information to share? David Brent from Technology raised his hand. I'd like to speak to Dante's character. 6 months ago, he discovered a security vulnerability in our client database. Instead of exploiting it for advantage or ignoring it, he worked 72 hours straight with my team to fix it before any data was compromised. He didn't ask for credit. He just did what was right. Angela Ross from marketing nodded. Last quarter, Dante personally mentored 3 women in my department who were facing discrimination. He didn't have to. It wasn't his job. But he saw people who needed help and stepped up. That's leadership. One by one, people shared stories I'd forgotten or never known made an impact. The time I took a pay cut to keep a team member from being laid off. The Saturday I spent helping Patricia's grandson prepare for a job interview. The countless hours I'd invested in others while my father and Jerome collected accolades. Enough, my father snarled. You're all being manipulated. Can't you see what he's doing? He's turning you against me, against Jerome, to steal what isn't his. What isn't his? Patricia stood, voice ringing with authority. Marcus, Dante has earned every opportunity through merit. What have you earned through fraud, favoritism, and frankly, racism? Racism? I married a black woman. And spent 30 years punishing her son for it, Patricia shot back. I've watched you systematically undermine Dante while covering for Jerome's incompetence. That stops today. Jameson called for the vote. All in favor of Jerome Bennett as the next senior vice president of operations. 4 hands rose, the old guard who golfed with my father. They looked uncomfortable, but loyal. All in favor of Dante Bennett. Patricia, Sandra Kim, David Brent, Angela Ross, and Michael Brennan raised their hands. 5 votes. My heart hammered. Abstention. Silence. Then Jameson spoke. As CEO, I cast the deciding vote. And I vote for Dante Bennett. The room erupted again, but I barely heard it. I was watching my father's face crumble, watching 30 years of certainty shatter like glass. Jerome had his head in his hands. And I felt empty. Victory, but at what cost? The next 72 hours were a blur of meetings, depositions, and corporate damage control. The board launched a full investigation into the fraud. Jerome was suspended immediately, pending results. My father was given the option to retire voluntarily or face termination and potential criminal charges. He chose retirement, effective in 2 weeks. Michael Brennan received immunity in exchange for his cooperation and resigned quietly. Vanessa Chester was not only protected but promoted to senior accountant with a 20% raise. She cried when I told her. You saved my career, she said. I thought I'd be blacklisted. You saved your integrity, I corrected. That's worth more. The hardest part was moving into my father's office. His secretary, Marlene, who'd worked for him for 18 years, helped me pack his personal effects. Photos of Jerome's graduations, awards, family trips I'd never been invited to. There wasn't a single picture of me. He did love you, you know, Marlene said softly, wrapping a crystal paperweight. In his own broken way. He just didn't know how to show it. Love isn't supposed to feel like punishment. No, she agreed. It's not. On my 4th day as senior VP, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It's me. Jerome's voice, smaller than I'd ever heard it. Can we talk? Not about the job. Not about Dad. Just as brothers. We met at that same diner where Vanessa had given me the evidence. Jerome looked wrecked, unshaven, rumpled suit, eyes hollow. He ordered coffee he didn't drink. I didn't know, he said finally. About the fraud. Not all of it. I thought Dad was just helping me shine a little brighter. I didn't realize how deep it went. Did you suspect? He was quiet for a long time. Yeah. Maybe. I didn't want to look too close because then I'd have to admit my success wasn't real. He laughed bitterly. Turns out ignorance isn't much of a defense. What are you going to do? Cooperate with the investigation. Face whatever consequences come. Maybe finally figure out who Jerome Bennett is without Dad's shadow. He met my eyes. I'm sorry, Dante. For everything. For taking credit for your work. For letting him treat you like garbage. For being too much of a coward to stand up for you. An apology wouldn't fix 30 years of damage. But it was something. What do you need? I asked. Nothing. That's not why I called. He stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth. You're going to be amazing at this job. You always were better than me. My father's retirement party was the kind of awkward affair where everyone pretends everything is fine while drowning in whiskey and regret. The board insisted on hosting it. Appearances matter in corporate America. I almost didn't go. Patricia convinced me I had to. Show them you're gracious in victory, she said. Show them you're the bigger man. So I went, wearing my best suit and a smile that felt like a mask. The room was full of executives who'd watched my father humiliate me for years and said nothing. Their congratulations felt hollow. Monica, my father's wife, cornered me near the bar. You must be so proud of yourself, she hissed. Destroying your own father's legacy. I exposed fraud. There's a difference. You could have handled it privately. Instead, you humiliated him publicly, turned Jerome's life upside down, all for what? Revenge. For truth, I said evenly. And if you're looking for someone who destroyed Dad's legacy, you should talk to the man who committed fraud for 18 months rather than admit his son wasn't qualified. She slapped me. The room went silent. Before I could react, my mother's voice cut through the tension. Monica, I suggest you step away from my son before I forget we're in a professional setting. I hadn't known Mom would be here. She stood in the doorway in a simple black dress, radiating dignity. Heads turned. Monica went pale. Elaine, she managed. I didn't know you were invited. I wasn't. I came anyway. Mom walked to me, took my arm. Because my son deserves support. Something you and your husband never understood. My father appeared then, drawn by the commotion. He looked old, diminished. When his eyes met Mom's, something passed between them. 30 years of history compressed into a glance. Elaine, he said softly. Marcus. Her voice was ice. I thought you should know that the son you threw away became the man you pretended to be. I hope that knowledge haunts you every single day. She turned to me. Baby, let's go. These people aren't worth your time. We left together, mother and son, while the room watched in stunned silence. Outside, under Chicago's glittering skyline, Mom hugged me tight. I'm so proud of you. I destroyed a family. No, baby. You told the truth. They destroyed themselves. 3 months into my tenure as senior VP, I implemented changes my father had blocked for years. Diversity initiatives. Transparent promotion criteria. Anonymous reporting systems for discrimination and fraud. Some old guard executives resigned rather than adapt. Good riddance. I hired Vanessa Chester as my chief of staff. She understood integrity in a way that couldn't be taught. Together, we rebuilt the culture from the ground up. The Henderson account, the one my father used to threaten me, became our biggest client. Tom Henderson called personally. I always believed in you, Dante. Not your name, not your connections. You. Jerome faced misdemeanor charges for his role in the fraud. He hadn't orchestrated it, but he'd benefited knowingly. He pleaded guilty, paid fines, and started working at a non-profit. We had lunch occasionally. Slowly, carefully, we were building something real. My father and I didn't speak. I'd sent him an email once, asking if we could talk. He never responded. Monica sent divorce papers 6 months after his retirement. Apparently, being married to a disgraced executive wasn't the social climbing opportunity she'd signed up for. Patricia retired the following year. At her farewell party, she pulled me aside. You did good, kid. Better than good. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. You just didn't have to. She squeezed my shoulder. Now pay it forward. Find someone who needs a champion and be for them what I was for you. I took that advice seriously. Over the next year, I mentored 12 employees from underrepresented backgrounds, connected them with opportunities, advocated for their promotions. It became my mission, ensuring no one else had to fight as hard as I did to be seen. One afternoon, my assistant buzzed. Mr. Bennet, there's someone here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important. His name is Mark Bennet. My father stood in my doorway, looking fragile. 70 years old now, retired, divorced, stripped of the identity he'd built his life around. I need 5 minutes, he said. I considered refusing. Considered all the times he'd refused me. Then I thought about the man I wanted to be, not the man he'd tried to make me. Come in. He sat across from me, in the chair where employees came seeking guidance. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I was wrong, he said simply. About everything. About you, about Jerome, about what matters. That's it. 3 months of silence and I was wrong. My father's hands trembled as he spoke. When I was 25, my father told me I'd never amount to anything because I married your mother. Said I'd thrown away my heritage for temporary infatuation. I spent 30 years trying to prove him wrong by becoming exactly what he wanted, and in the process, I became him. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I punished you for being the evidence of my rebellion. Every time I looked at you, I saw my father's disappointment reflected back. So I tried to erase you, replace you with Jerome, a son my father would have approved of. That's a reason, not an excuse. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Dante. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to understand that my cruelty came from my own brokenness, not from anything lacking in you. He pulled out an envelope. These are letters I wrote to you over the years. Birthdays, graduations, promotions. I never sent them because I was too proud, too afraid. I want you to have them now. I took the envelope, heavy with decades of words left unsaid. Why now? Because Monica's gone. Jerome barely speaks to me. I'm alone with nothing but regrets and this company I built that means nothing without someone to share it with. He stood, leaning heavily on his cane. I see now what I couldn't see before. You're not just a better businessman than me. You're a better man. Period. After he left, I opened the first letter. Dear Dante, you turned 5 today. I missed your party because I was working, but I want you to know I thought about you all day. You're going to do amazing things, son. I just hope I'm there to see them. Love. Dad. Tears blurred the ink. 30 years of love trapped in envelopes, too proud to be shared. My assistant buzzed again. Mr. Bennet. Richard Jameson is calling. I wiped my eyes. Put him through. Dante. Jameson's voice was warm. Excellent news. The board just voted unanimously to extend your contract and add executive vice president to your title. You've exceeded every expectation. Your father would be proud. Would he? I wondered, looking at the letters scattered across my desk. Thank you, sir. After the call, I sat in the office my father once commanded, thinking about legacy. Not the legacy of titles and corner offices, but the legacy of truth, integrity, and choosing to be better than the pain that shaped us. I picked up my phone and called my mother. Mom, I think I'm ready to forgive him. Not for him, for me. That's my boy, she said softly. That's my strong, beautiful boy. 6 months later, I stood at the podium accepting the Chicago Business Leadership Award. In the audience sat my mother, beaming. Next to her, tentatively, sat my father. Our eyes met. He nodded, a small gesture that somehow said everything. Jerome was there too, along with Patricia, Vanessa, and the team I'd built. People who believed in doing right over looking right. This award isn't just mine, I said into the microphone. It belongs to everyone who chooses truth over comfort, integrity over convenience. To anyone who's ever been told they're not enough, you are. You always were. The applause was thunderous. But the moment I'd remember forever was afterward, when my father approached with trembling hands. Dante, can I buy you dinner sometime? Just us. Father and son. I looked at this broken man who'd caused me so much pain, who'd finally found the courage to try. I thought about cycles of hurt, and cycles of healing. Yeah, Dad. I'd like that. As I walked out that night, I pulled out my phone one last time. If you believe everyone deserves a fair shot at success based on merit, not manipulation, hit that subscribe button. Only people like Marcus, who put ego over integrity, won't subscribe. Comment merit over favoritism, if you stand against nepotism and corporate corruption. And if you can't stand people who crush others to protect their golden children, smash that like button. Let's build a community that celebrates truth over toxic family loyalty. Because some stories aren't just about winning. They're about refusing to become the villain in someone else's redemption arc. They're about breaking cycles. And they're about proving that the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and then choosing grace anyway. My name is Dante Bennett. And this is how I stopped being my father's disappointment and became my own man.